So this is another great example of different areas that we have in the park. This was one of our first areas that were blown down. This was the area that was blown down in Arthur. Glossy buckthorn had slowly started to move through this part of the trail at this point, but it was very, very slow going. But if you guys notice, compared to over there with our more recent storm, compared to this one, the balsam fir was able to come up and take over a lot of the sunned areas that the glossy buckthorn actually did not come up at all. It was really interesting to see the different growths and stuff like that. And that's another one of our things that our park manager wants to try is to like remove a bunch of the glossy buckthorn, heavily plant in trees that are able to come up quickly, and see if reducing all of that light cover for the glossy buckthorn roots and rhizomes, if it'll have the same effect as this did. Because this is clearly a very different landscape compared to just over there.
So what do you think is the difference between here and over there?
I think one of the biggest things is both timing and it's just the way that the trees came up. We didn't have as much, I feel like, regen over here as quickly as we did in this area, where a lot of birch came up in this area. A lot of our balsam fir was able to come up relatively quickly, and it stopped any of the glossy buckthorn that was here from continuing to come up. Now it's slowly starting to sprinkle through, but mainly along the edges and in areas that don't have the regrowth coming up, which is really interesting to see that even in such sunny areas, we aren't having as much of the invasive that tends to do really well in the sunny areas coming up.
Here, I think the balsam fir were quite well established when the buckhorn came along, because like these are, 12 or more years old. And the buckhorn is recent.
The buckthorn has actually been in the park since the 90s. Yeah, so it was established way down back in the 90s. So it has been spreading since then throughout the park. It did reach this area a good while ago, but I feel like right now you're really seeing the stuff that's coming up in the last 5 years. But it's definitely like, it is a really established like plant here in the park, unfortunately. A lot of what you're seeing now is from people going off trails just because we've had more spread of it, like along like the very, very edges. But even back then, we would have had birds dropping the seeds in this area because it was so established not too far away.
So this is the result, like you said, of after Arthur coming through, and probably it took off. It obviously cleared a lot of the landscape, the overstory of the trees, and we've had a lot of fir come back. And that's going to be it. What you've been seeing here in terms of a vivacious species, you may not even realize that it's a risk on your woodlot until it is. And when you do have it, it's these observations that they're making here, like, okay, obviously there's none here, but there's a pile of it over there. What's the difference? And that kind of thing. So there's a lot of education to these invasive species, and there's a lot of learning that we're going to have to do. We just don't know. You have any thoughts on that, on what's happening here, Gareth? Or?
Well, the fir must have been established before Arthur hit, like as regeneration in the understory. So that's one of the differences, right? And I think it's Mackenzie, right? Yeah. Mackenzie spoke to the fact that there was less regeneration over there. So the fact that the fir was there and already established and waiting for light gave it a head start on what would have came. I don't know enough about the silvics of buckthorn, right? Like, it is somewhat shade tolerant, but maybe there's a level of shade that will prevent it from regenerating. Certainly that area would suggest that.
Well, that's kind of what we're hoping.
So that would lend itself to trying to get shade tolerant species established before the buckthorn gets a chance.
We're certainly in a time with a lot of unknowns, and that's the big thing with the climate is certainly changing. It's changing, I think, a lot faster than we ever thought it would. I think that's one of the things we've noticed, that, they had all these projections, and we seem to be moving a whole lot faster. It's like a roll of toilet paper. We're getting to it. It's rolling faster and faster all the time. And so there's a lot of this stuff that we just don't know, and trying to play catch up to figure out what's to go. That's why they promote diversity, and because there's so many unknowns. By the time we have the buckthorn figured out, we may be on to something else. And something may have come and eaten it, and we've got another problem. So, just trying to educate yourselves as much as possible. And I'm not sure how we can even work with sharing information. You know, I've learned a lot from you about glossy batiform that I didn't know, you know, and trials. So sharing information amongst ourselves and different organizations too, I think is very important.
That's one of our really big goals. We had the WWF conference a few weeks ago, and the site visit was here. So we had all of those non-for-profits and people who are more in that world come out, and we got to share with what we're doing, show them what's happening here at the park, kind of bring our knowledge out, being like, hey, this is what we have here. Like, if anybody else is going through the same thing, like, what are you guys doing? This is what we're doing. And we're really trying to get people aware of what's happening here, because we want everybody to start sharing the knowledge that's available and ready, that just doesn't seem to be getting, the connections don't seem to be getting made. So we're trying to change that.
We need an organizer.
I'm wondering if any of this down stuff has any beneficial use as nutrients to the ground, like by leaving it rather than clearing it out, like over time.
Yeah, no, leaving dead wood is great for the ground. It like provides, like, animals use it for ramps, and like it's has a lot of the same benefits as snags do. But and then as it what's the word I'm looking? Decomposes into the ground, that helps keep the soil like healthy. If you just take that out and you're always stripping the ground, there's nothing that's gonna go back into the ground to keep it healthy.
And one thing is important too, that even if you have a lot of, and I don't see fuel ladders here, do we? Well, maybe one over there. Yeah, so if it does, so the term fuel ladders is used when you've had a lot of blowdowns, but they don't go down. They get hooked up in another tree. So if a fire goes through, it can run up that ladder and get into the crown, and it continues to spread the fire. If there is not enough money, you can't entice a contractor to try to clean up. The main thing is, if you can get stuff down on the ground safely, obviously, they will decompose a lot quicker, because they need to be in contact with the soil, with all the little buggies that are in there that will help them decompose. Just get them down on the ground. If that's the minimum you can do, at least when you've got a lot of ladders, you've got a lot of potential for other things happening, whether it's fire as a fuel ladder. It's not going to decompose. Get it down on the ground. That's the big thing. And it will compose. What did you find for soil, Gareth?
It's clay loam.
Clay?
Yeah, clay loam. So good moisture retention. It's got a enriched day horizon, which could be a legacy of the old field. And then a leached horizon, then an oxidized B horizon. See that orange? Yeah. So that's from leaching. Carbonic acid dragging the iron into the B horizon. We could have a site difference here too. Like maybe this is a bit not as productive as the other site. Like, and there's also less hardwood in it, right? You don't see the aspen suckering here as you do in the others, where we first started.
So the leaching is caused by just natural?
Yeah, it's just carbonic. Rainwater is acidic with carbonic acid in it. So it, like without, on a rich enough site, the organic matter actually will mask some of the leaching that goes on. It's still occurring.
And that can actually leach, so excessive rainfall.
Yeah, well,
rainfall,
sometimes. Like anywhere, any climate where there's a lot of precipitation during the growing season, you're going to have a leached and an iron enriched B horizon on an upland, not a wetland, but when the water can freely drain from the soil. So,
When should we be doing soil samples on our woodlot?
my perspective is I think it should be a baseline part of your assessment of your woodlot. Like what kind of soils do you have? What's the potential for it? What kind of species could grow here? It helps you, like if you think of that diagram Deanne showed of the management cycle, right? It's part of that assessment because it also helps you to project what the future looks like, what would happen if I did no management. Like that's always should be your first question. Like if I did nothing, what would happen? Am I okay with that?
So do we send it off somewhere for an analysis, or can you tell just by looking at it?
I can tell you either need, well, I shouldn't say that. It depends on what you're planning to do. From an agricultural perspective, you definitely want the analysis. From a forestry perspective, you really only need a rapid assessment.
Which is what he's did right
Yeah.
here.
But in order to do a rapid assessment, you need to be able to assess the vegetation and the soil that you're looking at. Yeah. Whereas if you send it to the lab, it would tell you exactly what the nutrient and pH and everything is, right?
But sometimes it's overkill. Don't need all that for a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, I think in woodlot management, it's often more than you need. Yeah. Just to get a sample. But
Does anybody have any other questions about the site here or glossy buckthorn before we move on?
I'd just say, Anne, the other thing about if you get your debris onto the soil, it's wetter. So that's another reason why it's good to get your debris to the ground, because contact with the soil will make it wetter and less subject to burning.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, that's the interesting thing about deadwood, right? There's a point where it's a fire hazard, but beyond that point, it actually absorbs water. It actually helps. It actually becomes a fire retardant. Like forests that have a lot of dead, rotting, truly rotten organic matter in them are actually less prone to fire. So there's that window. There's that window of fire risk. But once you're beyond that, it's, yeah.
Our park is not a great example of like a good amount. We definitely have too much. If you're looking at it going, oh, is this too much or is it too little? No, we got too much. We have fire hazards.
All right, onward and upward.